Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Greg and this is episode 2. Today we are going to be dropping the 2 gearboxes that are part of the mechanical system that raises and lowers this thing. It's very tight and it does need servicing, so follow along as I attempt to do this for my first time, and maybe we can learn something together. So stick around. So as you can see here, my rear main gearbox here does not have the standard setup with the crank style arm. Somebody jammed a 17mm socket, maybe pounded on here, I don't know. But it's fine, really, because you just attach your ratchet here and, you know, do your thing. So that's fine, that's not really a big issue. I did notice this thing is rather difficult to raise. It's very, very slow, and there's definitely quite a bit of pressure, and I was worried about something breaking or snapping. So from the research I've done and the Facebook groups and everything, these gearboxes need servicing. So there's the rear gearbox, and that's the main point here where you're cranking on it, and then there's one connected to the front, which I'll show both here. So here's a look at the gearbox from underneath. And this is what we'll be dropping today. It's actually just 4 nuts that attach these. And then there is a cross shaft that goes all the way to the front. There's a little pin that I'll have to tap out. But that shaft runs all the way to the front gearbox, which makes everything turn in unison and raises the 4 corners. There is a very important step here that I will show you that you need to make sure you do first. So from what I've gathered on the interwebs, on the Facebook forums and groups on these Apache campers, is that this thing should not be super tight when opening. So I'm cranking it to the right. I mean, there's some good tension on it, and I don't think that's right, because it would take you forever to set up camp, and it just feels like something could be damaged while you're trying to do this. So that is why we are servicing these gearboxes, and that's why it's number 1 on my list. I do want to point out that step number 1 on dropping these gearboxes, also from what I've gathered from the forums and groups, is you need to take all the pressure off this system here. So you're going to want to make sure that everything's popped open, all your panels are in place, everything's locked in, and then slowly lower it down to the point where it's resting its weight on itself, so you don't have any tension on the gearboxes. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. I'm not trying to crank it down, I'm just kind of letting it get to the point where it's, you know, it feels like it's stopped. So that is very important, step number 1. Pro tip, if you don't have it already, pick up some PB Blaster. This penetrating catalyst oil is very good for breaking free rusted bolts and nuts and things like that. So step 1 is we're going to spray some of this PB Blaster on the nuts here and let that soak a bit so they can break free a little easier if they are a bit rusted shut, which I imagine they are. So yeah, give those 4 a good soaking, let that sit for, you know, 15 minutes or something, and then that should be much easier to remove. So you see here there is a skid plate that protects the gearbox. If you don't have this for some reason, you might want to invest in getting one or just having one made. It's like 1/4 inch steel that's just angled here. And this definitely protects the gearbox from getting ripped off if you like enter a steep driveway or hit a rock or something. Who knows? You know, road debris. So this is a very important piece here. I have a feeling I need to drop this first for clearance issues, so I'm going to go ahead and spray the nuts on this with the PB Blaster, and this will be step 1, is removing the skid plate, so I have room to drop this out here. Alright, it's time to drop these gearboxes, so here we go. Oh yeah, that PB Blaster is amazing stuff. Just like butter coming off here. Very nice. Okay. Well, that's a good start. Okay, so now that we have the gearbox nuts off that we're holding it up, so I think I figured this out. This pin that holds this cross shaft that goes to the front gearbox, it stays in place. There's no point in taking it out. So what it is, it's a fine balance as far as getting this thing off of the cross shaft, of kind of pushing this down and pulling back at the same time. So I've gotten it close. I'm just kind of shimmying it. There we go. There we go. I have removed the gearbox. Wow. That's awesome. Looking forward to seeing what we got here. Just a pro tip here I wanted to mention. This project involves laying on the ground at a very uncomfortable angle with very minimal room to work, and I needed an excuse to purchase a creeper, so picked this up at Harbor Freight, 40 bucks. I think it's well worth the investment. I'm also going to be spraying the underside of the frame and the axle, which does have some rust, in a future project here with this rust reformer, which I've used on my car. Living in the Rust Belt, we definitely deal with rust, so this stuff's great, and I'll go ahead and spray that maybe on a future episode. So, just a side note. Alright, let's move on to the front here. First step, PB blaster on the nuts. Give those a good soak. Alright. Man, it's hard to work under here. So yeah, we'll let those soak for 10 minutes or so and then get those guys off. I have a feeling this front gearbox will be much easier to drop now that the cross shaft is disconnected from the rear gearbox. Alright, so as I expected, this front gearbox, the cross shaft here, is going to come right off the pin. You just pull. So that's going to drop right out now. Super easy. Much easier than the back one. So I'm just cracking these nuts loose. And in my mind, that's just slowly taking the pressure off of the chains that the gearbox is attached to. So I'm just doing all four, just kind of loosen it up, and then I'll fully remove. Alright, this one's pretty stubborn. I think it's got the most rust. So I'm just going to use a little wire brush here and run it across the exposed threads. Maybe knock off something that's causing it to hang up. Hopefully between this and the PB blaster, it'll break free and come off. Alright, my other trick is my impact drill, which I didn't really want to use because I'm trying to be gentle with everything, but this does kind of vibrate things loose and maybe get past the little crunchy point here. There it is. That did it. Oh my god. She's free. I just had one stubborn one. Otherwise everything else went rather well. Alright, let's get these things on the workbench and see what we're looking at here for the first time. Alright, so here they are. Here is the rear gearbox and the front gearbox. I haven't touched anything They are filthy. There's definitely some spiders and creatures living inside here. To be honest, I don't really know what I'm looking at, other than to see if these teeth on the gears are worn or damaged, which I don't see at first glance, but I think the best bet here is to first step clean them up and get a better look at what we're working with here, and then do some research. Alright, I got these guys sprayed off with the air compressor. Got rid of all the critters at least, so I can see a little better inside here and what's going on. So I just tried to crank the rear gearbox by hand just to see what it looks like and what kind of movement we have here. And so I'll go ahead and do that. And you can see I'm spinning it by hand. It's not super tight. Things are moving, I believe, as they should. And it's not hard to move by hand, so that's a good sign. Like, maybe all we need here is just a clean and lube type job. So that looks okay. Now the front gearbox, this is a different situation here because I cannot for the life of me get this thing moving without hurting my hand. So you can see we have an issue with the front, and that probably explains why it was so tight on the back, because it's connected to the front. So something's like seized up in here. I think it just needs a really good cleaning. So my thought now is to open up these cases. First I'm going to take pictures so I know where everything goes, and then I'm going to totally clean each individual part and see what we're really looking at inside here. Notice this seal is cracked, which, go ahead and take that off because it's not really doing much, is it? Might have something to do with it. Alright. Yeah, let's get these cases opened up and do a little inventory and inspection, a little deeper inspection on the individual parts here. Alright, so the next step here is to open up these cases, and you can see here we have 4 bolts and nuts holding those together, and they're probably super crusty from rust and just being outside for so many years. So once again, PB Blaster to the rescue. Definitely pick up a bottle of this when doing this project and future projects on the camper. Very handy stuff. Anyway, we're just going to go ahead and soak these and let them sit for a bit, and then we'll try to gently break these free and see what we got going on here. Give that a good soak. You're also going to want to soak these pins here as well, because we're going to hammer these out in a second, and that should help. Alright, I'm struggling a bit to get this final length out. My thought is just soak it in PB Blaster, kind of tap it back through. That way it gets the oil to kind of push through there on each side. It's definitely moving smoother now. It's not going to take much. It's just barely hanging on here. There it is. Alright, gonna reuse these. Definitely got to clean these up. Maybe some steel wool and stuff. But we got it out. It wasn't terrible with the limited tools I have to do stuff like this. Alright, now that we have the roll pins out, that is good. You can see these shafts are pretty banged up, so I'll need to kind of smooth those out because I have a feeling they'll get stuck if I try to pull them. So we'll clean that up in a bit, but I do want to open these cases, and I wanted to mention, in addition to the PV blaster, I would use a wire brush on the threads to clean these up the best you can so they do break free a little easier, and there is a good chance that these will shear off or break as I do this, which is fine. These are really old pieces of hardware, and I'm going to replace them with some stainless hardware from Ace. I'll run over there today and grab some. But we'll do a thread cleaning, and then I'll crack these open and see how well that works. All right, here we go. Wish me luck. Okay, that came off like nothing. Probably could have taken that off with my finger. All right, that's awesome. It's a little stuck in there, but that's fine. We got the nut off. That's good. Let's see if the rest are like that. Hopefully, because that was very nice. Oh yeah, smooth. Little extra effort on the cleaning of the threads, I think, made a big difference. All right, we got the nuts off there. That's good. And this PV blaster stuff is incredible. I don't know how I managed without it for so many years. All right, these are coming off real nice. Already got that one. Let's get this guy. Yep. No issue here. That's awesome. Very cool. That one came out easy. Just tap these, I think. Yep. Yep. A little hung up, but it'll come. There we go. All right, the case is separated. Very nice. All right, I think the next step, I'm going to take off this little seal, and then here's pieces of the old gasket coming out. Then I'll clean up this shaft, you know, with a wire wheel or actually like a Scotch-Brite pad is what I was thinking about using, just to smooth it out a little bit. I do have a file as well, so we'll work on that. This little dust cover weather seal thing is actually in good shape. The other one is just gone completely. I need to figure out a way of getting a replacement, because that's going to keep a lot of junk out of these gearboxes during travel. So I'll have to figure that one out. If anybody knows, leave a comment. I've decided to not half-ass it and to use the file to knock off some of these burrs here. This should definitely help. Scotch pad here. It should be pretty good. Yep. All right, got that off. That's a start. Got this guy off. Very nice. Oh man, that is gunky. Whew. Those bearings are just frozen. And then this monster, probably gonna have to tap this off. But yeah, this thing is just caked with grease. Probably the wrong grease. The teeth are pretty good, actually. Surprisingly. Teeth look pretty good on here. They're pretty sharp. They're not super rounded. So that's awesome. Yeah, these bearings are just shot. So I'll probably soak these, see what we're working with here. I was going to see if there's like a part number on it, because I'm just going to order new bearings on like Amazon or something. So if you're going to do all this work, you might as well do it properly. Yeah, there's some numbers on this guy. Yeah, I think this is the wrong grease they used here. I mean, it's probably okay, but it definitely like collected dirt and stuff. So yeah, I need to clean all these guys up. But let me get this one off, and then we'll look closer at the bearings and maybe soak these up and go from there. Alright, we have a slight problem here. The shaft, at this point, I should be able to push it through this side, normally. But like I said earlier, someone had jammed on this 17mm socket and pounded it onto the shaft here. And now I need to get this off so this can slide out so I can get everything out of here. So this is going to be fun. So PB blaster again, I'm going to hammer this kind of left and right to kind of loosen it up. And I'm going to struggle with this for a bit. I'm not going to film that because that's going to be terrible. But that's what I'm doing now. Going to try to manage to get this off. Then I'm sure I'm going to have to file this and clean this up because this is pretty beat up. But we're getting there. We're almost free and can look at every individual part inside the gearbox. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I did it. I got the socket off the end of this shaft. Oh my god, what a nightmare. I tried everything, tried pounding it out, tons of PB blaster, which I'm sure helped, but it just, nothing was working. So, here's the 17mm socket that somebody literally just pounded on with a sledgehammer. The reason I didn't film it is because none of you guys are going to be in this situation, I hope. So this doesn't apply to your gearbox rebuild, only to my very fun situation here. So to get it off, I ended up cutting a slit with the cutoff wheel, trying not to hit the shaft, which I barely nicked it. It's not a big deal. And then that allowed for me to squeeze the other end to kind of open it up, and it kind of freed it, and then I pounded it out. But I just spent a half hour sweating my butt off trying to get this off without damaging anything. It's done. Hallelujah. Now this, what we're left with, is pretty beat up, and it doesn't go through. So I'm going to clean this up a bit, and it's going to need more than a file, unfortunately. It's bad. So I'm going to use a little sanding disc and just kind of take off the edges here. And then we'll go from there. So, all right, you can see I hit it with the sanding disc just to kind of knock off any burrs and bent over metal from the mashing of the socket. So this should slide out now. And yes, it does. So unfortunately, the end of the shaft's pretty tapered at this point, but I don't think it'll affect anything. I think it's still usable. I mean, the main shaft is still good. It's just this tip here. So there's still enough meat on there to get some good leverage on it without it breaking, I think. Anyway, the hard part is done. The other one should be so much easier. So, hallelujah. Alright, I'm going to clean all these guys up, and then we'll do a little further inspection. We'll see if these needle bearings actually move at all. I got to get rid of this crazy amount of grease that's in here. I don't think that really helped anything, to be honest. And no idea what kind of grease this is, but it's thick and nasty. So I'm going to do a little cleaning, and then we'll take a look again at the bearings and see if we can salvage them, or I'm probably just going to buy new ones, so we'll take a look. Nasty. That's gross. Alright, I'll show you how I press out these bushings pretty easily, as long as you have a vise. So these case bearings use, well, I'm using a 9/16 socket, and it is a perfect fit. And then I have a piece of wood behind it just to brace it so the stress is distributed evenly so I don't crack the case or something. But you're just going to center this up and then slowly apply pressure. You don't want to overdo it. It'll come out. Slow. Don't want to force it. It's already loosening up. There it goes. Heard a little pop. And now that is free. And a few more cranks and it should just pop right out. There it is. You got yourself a bearing. So I'm going to do that on all of them. And then we can order some up and swap them out with some fresh ones. But this is nice and easy. Alright, for these rubber cogs, I'm actually going to press these out this way, just a little more gentle. And they just come right out, so just be careful, and we'll be swapping those out too. Alright, quite simple, and I'll get the info off these and order a whole new set of bearings and then press these back in after I clean everything up here. I think I'm actually going to put all these plastic parts in a like a mild degreaser and just let those soak. Definitely don't want to put these in mineral spirits. I don't know what kind of plastic or rubber this is, but I think a mild degreaser would be the way to go here. Alright, I have my makeshift parts bath here with a mild degreaser, diluted, and a little bit of warm water. And I'm just going to let these soak a little bit, but I think the bottle said for greasy parts no longer than 5 to 10 minutes, so I will follow that instruction. And then I'm just using like a toothbrush basically to kind of get rid of some of the gunk, and it's definitely working. So I'll go ahead and clean all this up. And then after that, I think it's time to order the bearings on Amazon. I'll show those part numbers here in a second when I get those clean. And then once those come in, I'll press fit everything, lube everything, close it up, and pretty sure we're good to go. This should be night and day difference. These things were all seized up, so I'm not even sure how I lifted my camper at all, to be honest. So doing this the right way, hopefully, with replacing all the bearings rather than trying to salvage them. And yeah, I mean, it's the most critical part of your camper, so figured I'd spend the time and do this first, and then I can do all the fun stuff in future episodes, like countertops and electrical and plumbing and decorating, you know. That's the fun stuff, but this had to be done, so figured I'd film this, and I appreciate you guys watching, and hopefully this is helpful to somebody, because I'm sure there's a lot of people that need to do this, and they're probably a little scared. I was a little nervous, but I've always enjoyed taking things apart and learning how they work ever since I was a little kid, so this is kind of fun. Time-consuming, dirty, messy, not the easiest thing, but it is fun. And you learn how this stuff works on your camper in case anything happens, so it's a good learning experience. Anyway, enough rambling. I'll get these cleaned up. We'll take a look at the bearings in a second, and then once I get the bearings in, I will resume this edit and continue on. Alright, so now that I have the bearings cleaned up, I can see what we need to order here. First we have the B-1212, and these are the ones I pulled from the outer cases of each gearbox. So you'll need a total of 4 of those, B-1212, and I will post links below to all these needle bearings that I ordered from Amazon. Next up we have the B-1210. By the way, these are all Torrington brand, made in USA. That's what came out of the gearbox. You can still buy these. They are a little more expensive, probably because they're made in USA. But they're around $8 to $9 each. The ones I found on Amazon are around $6 each, so up to you, whatever route you want to go. But I'll post links below to the ones that I ordered. So you will need a total of the B-1210s. Those are for the main cog wheels, so you will need a total of 4 of those as well. And last up is the big needle bearing, which goes in that center cog wheel. You'll need a total of 2 of those, and that is B-1616. So that's all the needle bearings I need to order to get these guys fixed up. So as soon as I get those in, we will continue on here. All right, we have our new bearings in. So we can finish off this project here. The first step I'm going to do here is press fit these case bushings in first. That way that's done. And then I'll go ahead and press fit in all the cog bearings before I do any lubing, because I want this to not have any lube on the inside of the cog. But we'll go ahead and get started here. I'm going to go ahead and use the vise to press fit these in. Kind of tested it by hand. You could almost do it by hand, like the tolerance is not that tight. So you're not using all the force to push these in. I did notice that on one end of the bearing there's kind of this rolled edge, this kind of taper, and that matches the case as well. There's like a tapered end towards the front or towards the exterior. So you would obviously put that taper in to match the gearbox. And then we'll get that seated nice and flush. Don't over crank it. You don't want to crack the case. It really didn't take that much effort at all to press those in. And you can see we have a nice press fit bearing. As you can see, there's a little bit of a gap where it needs to be press fit in, just a hair more. And we're going to do that with the same way we got them out, with a 17mm socket and my little dead blow mallet and just a few little and that is seated nicely. So just drove it in just a hair more, maybe a 1/16 of an inch, but it's in all the way now. It's flush. Everything looks good. On to the next. Repeat this process 4 times. Moving on to the cogs here, and they should just kind of slide in, which they do. And I could use the vise, but it's not quite the right angle on the dangle, if you know what I mean. You do want to make sure that these are clean of any debris before you push these in, but we're just going to go ahead and use the dead blow and gently tap these guys in. And that was quite easy. And everything looks good. So we'll do that to all 6 of the cogs. This is the inner cog here. This takes the biggest bearing. Same thing, make sure it's clean. And this should work the same here. Yep. Just tap her in. This actually kind of moves in and out by hand, so it's not super tight in there, but tight enough to hold. It's not going to go anywhere. So there's that, and then this last guy on this gearbox. Just kind of press it in to hold it. There we go. And just gently tap. I would not recommend using a standard hammer for this, as you don't want to damage these or bend anything as you're going in, but this little dead blow hammer works just fine. But yeah, they're all in. Everything will kind of center out once I get the rod in, but now that these are in, I can actually lube this thing up and start assembling. So I'm going to do the other gearbox now, and then we will get to lubing and assembly here. Let's get to greasing. Alright, I'm just going to do a little dab on here. This is white lithium grease. This was recommended by others, and it is good stuff for gears and moving parts. So it already has some lube on the bearings that it came with, some grease, but just adding a little bit here. I'm not going crazy. I'm not caking it up. Just using a little dab and fingertip roll here. But that should be fine. That's something. Okay, there's one. Here's the big guy. Let's do a squirt in here. Nothing crazy. Again, just roll that around. Make sure it's got everything coated. Okay, that's looking good. All right, there's that. All right, just adding some grease now. Some white lithium. Just a little dab here. Just kind of roll it around on your finger. You can even spin it if you want. But yeah, that's nice and lubed. Get the edges. I don't think you want to cake this stuff on. I think this is plenty. Okay, so we'll do that to both cogs and all that, and do the cases as well. Same thing. Just add a little dab. These bearings already came pre-greased from the factory, so probably don't even need this, to be honest, but the white lithium stuff is good, so we'll just add a little extra. Can't hurt. Okay, good. Fully coated. Perfect. Okay. Now that we have everything lubed, we will assemble. Alright, the last bit of lubrication is on the faces of these interior case parts here. That's where the plastic will ride on here. So just add a little dab around here. And then I'm going to put a little bit on the shaft, not much. And I don't need to go all the way out to the end here, but just where everything is riding on the bearings, add a little bit, like so. And now we are ready to assemble. Very important thing, I did take reference photos when I took these off the camper, so I kind of know the position of the cogs and what parts go where, and hopefully I didn't mix anything up, but we're going to find out towards the end here. But I'm going to refer to my photos I took and reassemblies the way they came out of the camper. So I actually marked this case as the rear, and this little pin will kind of let you know that that is the rear. I believe that's to hold down your little clamping mechanism that raises your camper, which I actually don't have. The next step as well, which I almost forgot, is I will need a gasket seal for this, just to keep some of the weather out. I was trying to find some really cheap stuff because I don't need like automotive gasket because there's no temperature involved here really. But this is what they had at Ace Hardware, so this is what I got. But this will create a nice little seal, and I'll do that before I do everything else here, I think. I'm learning as I go here. This is not professional advice. This is just me rebuilding my gearboxes for the first time ever and figuring it out as I go. So if I end up doing this properly and everything works great, then you can follow my advice to the T if you'd like. One important note here is do not try to seal up this weep hole on each of the gearboxes. That is there on purpose. In case any moisture gets in there, it can just drain out the bottom. So do not seal that off. That is there on purpose. And that should just create a little bit of a weather seal to keep all the gunk and grime from the road and the elements outdoors out of the gearboxes. So we're just going to drop in our new stainless hardware here. Okay, hammered the pin in. Position looks good. It's pretty much even on each side. Close enough, I think. And let's see the action on this thing now. Before, I could barely move. And now, it is amazing. Like, very low effort. This is going to be totally different opening and closing this camper now. Very nice. Awesome. Okay. Looking good. And then I'll realign the gears before I try to place them back on the camper on the chains. So I'll reference my photos again. The gearboxes are all put together. Everything looks good to me. Pretty much ready to pop these back on to the camper and attach everything. One thing I wanted to mention, and this may not apply to you, but if you saw earlier in the video, I don't have a regular handle. Somebody pounded on a socket to the point where it really messed up the shaft and it was a nightmare to remove. So because I don't have a handle, I saw in some of the Facebook groups somebody just slots out a socket that fits it. Then you can use any kind of ratchet to open this thing, which I have plenty of different ratchet handles, so I think that's what I'm going to do. So I went ahead and used a 3/4 inch long socket from Harbor Freight. These are pretty cheap. And I slotted it, I measured everything and slotted it to fit the pin now. So this should just fit on tightly, and it moves and holds everything very tight. So this should work really well. It just slips on and off like you can see, so I don't have to damage the shaft anymore, which is good. So this should work for now. Maybe I'll make a actual handle at some point, a dedicated handle for the camper, but this will work for now. So just wanted to mention that real quick. Alright folks, we did it. I did not film the install because it's the same as the removal process, so nothing really exciting there. Only thing I wanted to mention is I did clean up these threads before I installed these. I used the PV blaster and the wire brush and got everything clean before I put the lock nuts on, which helped a lot. And other than that, I have tested pretty much everything here, and it's all the way down right now, but it's super smooth. Like I'm barely pressing and that's moving. What a difference. And I go the other way till it kind of stops. I'm not going to force that, but overall I did it. I learned a lot as I went, and hopefully somebody will find some of this information helpful. You know, it was a little intimidating doing this for the first time, but overall I learned a lot, and you know, I know how this system works now, so if anything was to malfunction, I'd be way more confident in, you know, repairing this. So I got some extra parts left over, and I'll be ready for my next service. But that's it. That's it for this episode. I would show the operation of it working here, but it's pouring down rain, and I installed this in the rain. That was a pain in the butt. That's the other reason I didn't film. But you'll see the opening and closing operation in future videos, I'm sure. So stick around for the next episode. I did just order a 300 and something amp hour LifePo battery to be my battery system for this thing. So I'm going to start working on the electrical and all that fun stuff. I think moving forward, the rest of this stuff is going to be fun, at least for me. This Gearbox project was probably the hardest thing I would do on this camper build, so figured I'd film it and hopefully somebody learned something. But anyway, stick around, and episode 3 coming shortly. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Take care.